Hi everyone and welcome to another English with Joseph. Well, today I would like to begin by talking about the British royal family. Don't worry, no one's died, at least not as far as I know. The Queen is still very alive and well. The British royal family dates its roots, its genealogy, its lineage back hundreds and hundreds of years. The Scottish royal family and the English royal family were always intertwined at various points of history. In the 16th or 17th century, they were cousins of each other. As Scotland was almost bankrupt and to form the UK, the King of Scotland came south to be king of both countries. He became King James VI of Scotland, King James I of England, and he was particularly famous for his production of the King James Bible, or maybe I should say his translation of the King James Bible, which was presented to him at his palace in Hampton Court, which is indeed very beautiful if you go and visit it. I think elsewhere on this video blog I have a picture, or at least a video clip of Hampton Court Palace. I went to see it a few months ago, and if you can't find it on my page, then please do write to me and I'll be happy to share that with you. So that was King James VI of England, King James I of Scotland. No, King James VI of Scotland, King James I of England, and how he came to be on the throne. Scotland and England always had a very different type of history when it came to Catholicism and the Reformers. So for him to be king meant at that time he had to be Protestant. And there was a big battle before he came to the throne called the Battle of the Boyne in Ireland to ensure that the monarch would indeed be Protestant. And even today, Catholics are not allowed to take the throne of England. So if you want to be King or Queen of England, you have to be a member of the established church, which is the Church of England. Okay, what do I think of the royal family? Well, to be honest, they really aren't relevant in my daily life. They aren't really important for me. They aren't really relevant for me. I don't think I think of them very often. However, having said all of that, for the purposes of consistency and stability, I do like the Queen. There is something nice in the knowledge that the Queen has been there long before I was born. In fact, the Queen has been there since my parents were born as well. It just seems like she's been there forever. I think she came to the throne in 1953. She was married in 1947. So she's very old now. And it's nice to think that there has been something continuing as it always has been in a world which, quite frankly, has changed everything else. So the idea of the Queen being there always is nice and good. I like it. I'm very happy with that. However, I have a problem with the young royals. I don't particularly like them. And also their roles are changing. The Queen no longer has any power in our government. Officially, she's there just to sign documents and to show her support. She still is technically the head of the government, but she's not allowed to get involved in their day-to-day affairs, or at least if she did, we probably wouldn't get to hear about it. Although at certain times she has made speeches of concern for particular things. For example, the breakup of the UK and Scotland becoming independent. She's spoken about that, about how sad she would be if Scotland broke away. I'm not quite sure if that's because of her position in Scotland, whether she feels that she wouldn't be queen there. I don't know how all that would work, but she has said in the past that she would be very sad if something like that happened. She's also made remarks about Australia and their attitude towards the Commonwealth and the royal family, and again, that's a big thing for her. But sometimes I just think that she doesn't live in this world, you know. I mean, I'm very British. I really admire the British system, the liberalism, the democracy that we have. But at the same time, I just sometimes think, yeah, she comes with her car and carry on, waves and tells us, you know, oh yes, stiff upper lip, as she always says in her speeches, you know. And yes, I admire the British people very much and their attitude to supporting me and my family during a very difficult time, as she says every year on the Queen's speech. But I just don't know how relevant she is. Like, I don't know if she knows how I live or how any of us live. I don't even know if she's aware of immigration. I don't know. Certainly her husband isn't, when you hear some of his comments that he makes, but I just don't know how she lives, you know. The younger ones, I would guess, are much more in touch with us, but in terms of how royal they could be, I don't know. I like the old idea of a royal family, but I don't like the system as it is, although I do love our Queen. I love old royals. Anyway, their history is very, very interesting. I already told you about the Scotland and England thing when they came together, but they have had a few scandals in their day. One of the biggest scandals, of course, was the marriage of King Edward VIII. The Queen's father was king, but he was only king because his brother didn't want to be king. His brother was having a relationship with a married, divorced American. And in those days, in the 1930s, that wasn't allowed. So they asked him, okay, you have to choose. You take the throne or you take the woman and get out the country and leave. And he did. He took the woman, and I don't actually think he ever became king, or I don't think there was a coronation for him at least. So it automatically passed to his brother, and that was Prince Albert, who became known as King George VI, and his wife, the Queen Mother, whom you'll all remember, she only died about 10 years ago. She said it was an intolerable honour, and she said, had I known that my children would have had to go through this, I would never have became queen. She was very. I think the royal family know that it's not a particularly nice job to be king or queen, because everyone's looking at you and you have no privacy. And eventually that passed to the Queen's father and then ultimately to the Queen. So they weren't raised in a way that was preparing them to become king and queen, because they thought that the brother was going to have the job of that. So eventually the Queen became Queen in 1953 when her father died, and the Queen Mother lived on as Queen Mother. That was one of the scandals. Another scandal, of course, was with Camilla. Camilla is Charles's wife. Camilla's grandmother was the secretary of the Queen's. Now, I can't remember if it was the Queen's grandfather or the Queen's great-grandfather. It was either George V or Edward VII. I'm sure it was Edward VII, actually, and his wife, Queen Alexandra, is it? There's so many of them I get confused. But anyway, the Queen's father was King George. The Queen's grandfather was King George. His father, in turn, was Edward VII. So you have the Queen, Elizabeth II, her father, George VI, and the wife, Queen Elizabeth. Remember, if a king marries a woman, she becomes queen, but she's not recognised as Queen Elizabeth I or anything like that, because the real king is her husband. So the Queen's father married Elizabeth Bowes-Lyons. Okay, so he was King George VI. His wife was Queen Elizabeth, purely because she'd married the king, not because she was Elizabeth I or anything like this. She came from Scotland, actually. So you have the Queen, you have Her father, King George VI, and Queen Elizabeth. His father was King George V, and his wife, I think, was Queen Mary. And then the next one back was Edward VII, and his wife was Queen Alexandra. And I can't remember about the wives now, whether Mary was Edward's wife and George was Alexandra's wife, but one of them was Alexandra, one of them was Mary. Anyway, Camilla's grandmother was secretary to Edward VII, and it was also his lover. It was the king's mistress. So it seems rather strange that Camilla should be Charles's wife, and indeed was Charles's lover before that. So maybe history really does repeat itself. Anyway, that's a very brief history of the royal family. You have the Queen, King George VI, and his brother was to be Edward VIII, but it wasn't to be because he left in favour of his wife, Wallis Simpson, and they lived in Paris together for a number of years. They've both been dead now for a lot of years, but very interesting family. Wallis Simpson was famous for fashion. In fact, the little crocodile brooch that you see some people wearing, it was her that had instigated that and had brought it forward. Okay, so that's all I really want to say on the royal family. I also want to have a quick chat with you about adverbs. What's an adverb? Tell me. I'm waiting. No? Okay, an adverb describes a verb in the same way as an adjective describes a noun. The green car, that's the car which is a noun, and the colour which is green. You have the adjective and the noun. A verb is described by an adverb. Okay, so he ran up the stairs quickly. It tells you how he ran up the stairs. He sat downstairs. It tells you where he sat. I did that yesterday. It tells you when it was done. Okay, so you have adverbs of time, manner, and place. There's loads of other ones, but those are the three main ones. Okay, some adverbs take ly, but some don't. He ran up the stairs quickly. He ran up the stairs fast. They're both adverbs, and it's difficult to know when you can add ly and when you can't. Okay, so an adverb is designed to get you to describe a verb more fully. So the adverb describes how the verb was done, when the verb was done, and where the verb was done. Okay, that's a very brief introduction to adverbs. If you want my free booklet on adverbs, please do drop me an email, mctaggartjoseph7@gmail.com. You can find me and all my details on the links which are in this Dailymotion page, and I hope that gives you some additional information on British history today. Remember, check me out on Twitter, Facebook, Google+. I'm on everything, so you can connect with me in 100 different ways. Alright, thank you, and a very, very good and happy day to you. Bye-bye.